Welcome to Hockey Nights in Vegas, episode 90. My name is Eddie Ripken. I'm joined as always by Chris Chapman of Fox Sports Las Vegas and the Vegas Golden Knights pre- and post-game show. This episode, like all others, is brought to you by the Las Vegas Advisor at lasvegasadvisor.com, by Dr. John Pierce at agelessforever.net, and by the greatest criminal attorney in the world because he represents Chapman, marathonlawgroup.com. Let's get right into it. We made prognostications at the end of the Alex Tuck Real Housewives of Summerlin episode, where we both decided that the Golden Knights were going to beat Winnipeg and then beat Utah on Saturday night. We're a day later than we normally are. We decided we would cover the Edmonton game before we gave you another episode. But Chris, this episode is going to be called Skyrockets and Dog Rockets. Right? That's a clever, classy title. Skyrockets because, in my opinion, even including last night's 1-0 win over Edmonton that we will get into later on in the episode, I thought the Winnipeg game was a better game all in all. At the time, Winnipeg was still the best team in the NHL. And even though the game was back and forth, and it ended up being a 4-3 Golden Knights victory, Vegas carried the play most of the night. The game never really seemed in doubt as far as what the eventual outcome would be, but in an absolutely, yes, it's a signature game. It was certainly the marquee game in the NHL that night. The Golden Knights played a complete 60-minute game, and they beat a very, very good Winnipeg team. They continue to get good goaltending from Adin Hill of Team Canada. He won't tell us that just yet, but we'll get to the Four Nations later as well. But how good were they against Winnipeg, Chap?
Well, all things considered, you come home from a long 5-game road trip to the East Coast with a stop in Denver, where they were completely gassed in that third period against the Avalanche. But look, you come home, you have Thanksgiving, really not a lot of time with your family, and you have one of the best teams in the NHL coming into your barn. I thought it was a full 60-minute effort. They were ready to go from puck drop until the final whistle. They played a complete game. I thought it was one of their best games of the season. They showed that they were, a team to be reckoned with, despite all the fanfare that the Winnipeg Jets had come in with. And look, these two teams are going to play again next week. So things may be different in Winnipeg, but at least for the time being, the Golden Knights prove that they are a better team than the Winnipeg Jets. To be fair, we did not see Connor Hellebuck. It was Eric Comrie in net for Winnipeg, but he played a good game. It's not like Eric Comrie was trash in that game. He played a really good game. So, look, the Golden Knights, I think all things considered, you have to look at that and say it was a 10 out of 10 effort, because when you come home from that long road trip, usually that first game back, we hear it all the time, that first game back, generally you're not there because you hadn't seen your family in 10, 12 days. In this instance, they had Thanksgiving. For William Karlsson, he had a child born. And, they looked like they were out of gas in Denver. And maybe
They were.
Maybe that stop in Denver was actually a blessing, because had they come directly home from Philadelphia, coming off that high, maybe they don't play as well. But they played I would say, was it Adin Hill who was in net for them against the Avalanche?
Yep.
He stole them a point in that game because he was so good. And I thought that all in all, they played a really good game against the Jets. And it's certainly one to be very happy about if you're Bruce Cassidy. Like, this is the blueprint on how you beat good teams.
This was an 11 out of 10 effort. You talked about all the travel. A couple of the interesting little tidbits that probably don't get discussed. They didn't get in until 3 a.m.
Right.
They normally, when a West Coast team does an East Coast trip, they have at least 2 days before they get right back at it. The Golden Knights were late arriving out of Denver. They got in. It was Thanksgiving morning. Like you said, they hadn't seen their family in 12 days. They had to do the whole Thanksgiving thing. And I think that we were universally in agreement across press row that this game wasn't necessarily going to be their best effort, and we would understand why it wasn't their best effort for all the things that we've just discussed. However, they fooled us because it really was. It was a complete 60-minute game, and as tired as they were in Denver, a couple nights before that game, I don't know if it was adrenaline. I don't know if it's that, the Vegas Golden Knights play up to their competition and down to their competition, but it was a statement game. If you needed more statements about the Golden Knights, that they're for real and that all the prognosticators have them 8th or 9th or 10th in the odds as far as winning the Stanley Cup, they are a legitimate top 5 contender because they beat the Winnipeg Jets without Mark Stone. They beat the Winnipeg Jets with a whole bunch of people on the MASH list. And they not only they beat them by a goal 4-3, but they convincingly beat them on the ice for 60 minutes. And, Bruce is not a rah-rah guy, and he's not a passer out of tons of compliments or anything like that. But in that room, he said, boys, that was a fucking job you guys just did. And it was a job that they just did.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those ones, like I said, where if you're Bruce Cassidy, that's the video you show. This is the blueprint.
All year.
I mean, look, everything you wanted to see was there. They had the jump from the get-go. As you mentioned, no Mark Stone. Again, we don't know when we're going to see Mark Stone. I guess he was skating. I don't know. I try not to follow it too closely because I don't want to get my hopes up. So it's like when he returns, he returns. That's kind of the way I look at things at this point with Mark Stone.
Yep.
When we show up at the rink and we see his name on the lineup card, that's when we'll get excited about Mark Stone being back. But no Victor Olofsson in that game. He came back the following night. Look, I think Zach Whitecloud was on the injured list.
Was and still.
Yeah. So obviously no Ben Hutton. So I think, all things considered, it was an excellent game. It's one that you hang your hat on because you say, this is how we play hockey. This is Golden Knights hockey. They got timely goals. I mean, Brett Howden,
again,
both of his goals. The first one, they were losing 1-0. He gets it right before the end of the first period. And he basically takes the puck in the defensive zone, goes through the neutral zone, puts the afterburners on, skates right around a member of the Winnipeg Jets, and puts the puck.
I think that was Logan Stanley who won the Pylon of the Night award.
Yeah, may have been, and then the second goal, it was vintage Brett Howden because you had William Karlsson make the pass. Alexander Holtz, who doesn't get a point on the goal, but he does a good job of getting to the front of the net to kind of distract the defense, and Eric Comrie, and there's Brett Howden on the doorstep, puts the puck in the net. So, look, it was a really good game. Ivan Barbashev has been playing extremely well, but it was vintage Golden Knights. I mean, that's the way that they need to beat good teams. They got good play from the goalie, and they had a really good defensive effort. Obviously, we're going to talk about another really good defensive effort
later
in a little bit. But I thought, listen, this is one of the best teams in the NHL that you beat, and the circumstances were not ideal. And I don't know about you, but I never really felt like that game was in doubt.
No, I agree. So in keeping with the title, that will be a skyrocket. And then comes the dog rocket. And yes, we're talking about dog shit because the Golden Knights lost to the Utah Hockey Club 6-0 in the most lopsided defeat at home in the history of the franchise. But instead of dwelling on that, I don't think I'm going to dwell on it at all. I think I'm going to look at 7 games in 10 days. I think I'm going to look at a team that was just dead ass tired. They actually started out pretty well. You were at the UNLV game.
Yeah.
They started out actually fairly well against Utah. 2 bad bounces. They were down 2-0. And then it was just a piling on of poo is the best way to describe it. I don't really take anything away from that game at all other than 7 games in 10 nights, Samsonov got hung out to dry. He didn't help himself. He did not have a good game. Let's not cover for him at all. But the team was just beat to death. And I think, even though you weren't there, I think it would be fair to almost say, I think the game that we saw against Utah might have been the game we were kind of expecting against Winnipeg the night before, because they were on the shortest of short rest.
Yeah.
And, even Bruce, who, if a team loses by 6 goals and you have a coach like Bruce, who is the definition of an open book when it comes to talking to us after the game, he doesn't duck any questions. And he's brutally honest in his, recap of the game. Honestly, I don't think he gave that much a shit about it. I think he was more looking at getting them a day off and recharging and having a complete day off with their families and getting back at it. So I don't even think it's a burn the tape. I don't even think the tape even exists anymore. I think it was a giant nothing burger that the national media made a big stink about. Oh, Utah came into Vegas and fucking dog walked the Golden Knights. Meh, I don't think so. What do you got?
Well, from what I saw of the game, it just seemed like every mistake the Golden Knights made, Utah punished them for it. And some nights are going to be like that. There's certain times of the year and certain games where you don't take much stock in that game. Like if they played the Utah last night, they don't lose that game 6-0. It was an inevitability that they were going to have a game where the score was lopsided. They got 7 of 10 points on the road trip. They beat the Winnipeg Jets at home one night after returning home from that road trip. Not a lot of rest involved. I don't think they were tired. I just think it was one of those games where Utah was focused. They had a really good effort from their goalie. I don't remember the kid's name who played for them, but I know he's not a household name.
No, I think it was his 5th NHL game or 6th NHL game. Yeah.
So, the kid played a great game at T-Mobile Arena. It's about as big time as it gets for him to come into Vegas and get that shutout. So, look, Utah's not a bad team. They're not the dregs of the NHL. They're not Montreal. They're not San Jose. They're not Anaheim. Chicago. But they're a decent team, and they play in a tough division. They're probably not going to make the playoffs, but I'd rather be them than Nashville right now. And I think
I'm enjoying that, by the way.
Yeah, I think a lot of us should. I'm not. I haven't really paid too much attention. I just know that things aren't going well there. So at the end of the day, they're like, I get social media drives me nuts because I'm very active on it, and I have a lot of people who were critical of the performance on Saturday night. And look, you could be upset about the scoreline, but they're not going to go 82-0. They're not going to win like 25 games in a row. It doesn't happen. The NHL, there's too much parity. There's too many good players, and there's too many variables from night to night. And, the team is entitled to have a bad game every once in a while. Like the overreaction and not just
majestic.
Well, yeah. You mentioned the national media, but I think the overreaction from the fan base sometimes is like, it's like, okay, the score looks like they got the shit kicked out of them, but they just beat the Winnipeg Jets the night before. Right, they got a point against the Colorado Avalanche. It's let's pump the brakes. Now, if you get this performance in the playoffs,
different.
All right, different story. But the 82-game season, it's a grind, and there's no easy games in the NHL. I know Montreal, they're a punching bag, and we kind of joke about how awful they are. But Eddie, it's not like Montreal has a bunch of college kids. They have professional hockey players. And one of my favorite lines comes from Ryan, the hockey guy, and he says, listen, if you just put the jerseys down on the ice, the Golden Knights will win every single game. But there's players in those jerseys on the ice when you're going up against them. Those guys have pride. Those guys are going to play hard. It's not like teams show up and say, we're not going to give the effort tonight. Every once in a while, you're going to have a stinker. And I don't even necessarily know if the game was a stinker. It's just the score indicated it was a stinker. But
They became disinterested after the Samsonov made a horrible mistake and ended up in the back of the net for the 2-0 goal. It was like a legendary blooper highlight embarrassment. Come out of the net, pass the puck directly to the guy in the other colored sweater.
yeah,
And that kind of broke them, and they were just disinterested. So the dog rocket wasn't truly a dog rocket, in my opinion. It certainly didn't affect them. They were like, fuck it. These things happen, just like you said. But we were wrong. We both said they should win both, and they won 1 out of 2. Before we get into last night's game against the Edmonton Oilers, let's get a quick word in for my good friend, Dr. John Pierce at Ageless Forever. So if there's a little bit too much whip in the shaft of your hockey stick and you want to be able to hit the back of the net, here's your answer. But I'm not going to tell you anything about it because I'm going to let my good friend, Dr. Pierce, tell you exactly what this bad boy is, and prepare to be amazed.
This is the Phoenix Pro. This is a home unit to deliver extracorporeal, I call it sound wave therapy. The technical term is shock wave therapy.
Here's where we get to the fun stuff, kids.
Okay? They applied it to their genitalia, and they found that, yes, indeed, it improves blood flow. We talk about, male genitalia. What is an erection? It is a blood flow issue. So if you're having issues, and you've gone to see your doctor, you've had your testosterone balanced, and you're doing those things, and it's working great. If you're finding that you're using a medication like Viagra, Cialis, something like that, and you're finding less and less effect, that means that the blood flow isn't as good. Something like this can help to mitigate that issue.
So let me break this down for you in layman's terms. If your junk is more like a pool noodle than a pool cue, it's going to make your junk hard. Dr. John Pierce, Ageless Forever, www.agelessforever.net. Don't be shy. Send a message. The first consultation is free. You'll meet with Dr. Pierce personally. You'll have the ability to share whatever it is you want to share. This bad boy works. So, something for you to think about. www.agelessforever.net. Send a message. Take advantage of the free consultation, and let's get you to be the best you can be. And we're back. Let's talk, Chapman, about last night's game against the Edmonton Oilers. A lot of strange, unusual facts came out about that game. First, 1-0, 1 point, no penalty game in 50-some years, and I believe the 5th of all time in the NHL. Very strange game. I will say if Winnipeg was the best effort they've put forth, last night was probably second. It was certainly the best defensive effort. The Golden Knights gave up 12 shots in the first 2 periods. They knew the push was coming. Edmonton landed 16 shots in the third period. But you know what? We're sitting next to each other at the game talking about it. The Golden Knights didn't have a shot for the last 19 minutes and 4 seconds, some absurd number like that. But did you really feel like they were ever in danger in that third period? Or did you sort of feel like Edmonton was a lot of time on the outside, maybe 2 or 3 high danger areas, but the game never felt, I don't know what I want to call it, it didn't feel like it got away from the team. Do you know what I'm saying, Chris?
Well, I mean, I thought Edmonton in the third period had a couple more high danger chances than they had the previous. I think Connor McDavid didn't have a shot until the third period.
And Draisaitl had none.
Yeah. So Draisaitl was, I mean, he did not have, it certainly was not one of those games for Leon Draisaitl where he's going to hang a banner and say, this was a marquee
$14 million a year.
Yeah. But, I thought Aiden Hill played a really good game. He made every stop that he needed to make. But there were some moments in that game where if Aiden Hill does not, like there was a play where, and he talked about it, I think it was Jesse Granger that asked him about it, where he basically took He took a shot to the mask and then it deflected and hit him in the shoulder, and he kind of lost track of the puck a little bit. But I think that it was a really good defensive effort. Obviously, I thought it was the best defensive game of the season for the Golden Knights. Again, it was one of those. They had a game plan. They stuck to it. They executed, and they ended up getting the necessary points. And look, they're 2-0 against the Jets this year in 120 minutes of hockey. The Edmonton Oilers have scored 2 goals in 2 games against Golden Knights
on 55 shots.
Now, you mentioned the oddity. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a dive into those previous 4 games, because it was the first game in NHL history where there was 1 or fewer goals, 0 penalties, and on the goal, there was nobody with an assist. It's the first time that's ever happened in over 100 years of the NHL. Now, there are 4 other times where a game ended with 1 or fewer goals and 0 penalties. 2 of them don't count because they're forfeits. In 1918, so if you were at T-Mobile for that game last night, you witnessed history. But in 1918, the Montreal Wanderers, they forfeited 2 games on January 2nd and January 5th, one against the Montreal Canadiens and the other against the Toronto Arenas, because, you ready for this? Their fucking arena burnt down. So they had no place to play. Now, the Canadians who shared the arena with them decided to move to the Montreal Forum, and the Wanderers chose not to go because apparently their fan base was mostly English-speaking people from Montreal, and the Forum was in a heavily French-speaking area of Montreal at the time. So the Wanderers, well, there's a reason why they're no longer around. That may have something to do with it. So their 2 games against Canadians and the arenas don't count. In 1924, Hamilton lost to Ottawa 1-0, and a guy named Frank Nyber had the goal for Ottawa. King Clancy with the assist. Again, 1 goal, no penalties, 1 assist. 1944, the last time something like this happened, it was Toronto Maple Leafs and the Chicago Blackhawks. They played to a 0-0 draw. So that one, obviously, no goals, no penalties. So last night was unique in that there was no assist on the only goal in the game to go along with the no penalties. So I texted Garrett G Money, our guy with the Golden Knights, and I said, listen, that was history. You better find the puck, because send that one to Toronto, because Ivan Barbashev is now he's a historical footnote in the history of the NHL, which is very, very cool. And for the 18,000 people that were there last night, we got to witness something that, quite frankly, we may never see again.
I want to go deeper into the minutia of the game. I don't do that a lot, but there are some interesting keys to the game. Do you know who the least penalized team in the NHL is?
I would venture to guess that the Golden Knights are the least penalized team in the NHL.
They are, in fact, 55 minor penalties through the first 25 or 26.
Which has been their MO since Bruce Cassidy became. I think even going back to Pete DeBoer, they were not very heavily penalized.
They are the 3-time defending least penalized team in the NHL with 55 right now. Boston, in case you're curious, is leading the NHL in penalties with 96. The Golden Knights are tied with the Islanders. The significance of that is in a game like last night's game, where it wasn't enormously high event hockey, the fact that they didn't allow Edmonton on the power play, which is oftentimes a momentum changer for them when they can put out, Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, Evan Bouchard, right? The fact that they play such an incredibly disciplined game, I think subtly played a really important factor of how that game they stayed right within their game. They played right within the structure. Bruce said to us after the game, we know how to play this team. We know how to defend this team. And that's right at textbook stuff.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about what Bruce said, I want to talk a little bit about coaching. The significant difference between the Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers was was very visible last night in the last 3 minutes of the game. And I'm going to tell you something that I bet you didn't know, and I'm going to make the comparison. The Golden Knights, or rather Edmonton, pulled their goalie with 2 minutes and 44 seconds left. You know, sometimes when we watch the game, they have that crawl across the bottom with shift times.
Uh-huh.
Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, 2.5-minute shifts. The other guy, not Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, over 3 minutes. Now, let me tell you something. If you look at Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, when Edmonton was pushing to score the last goal in tie up the seventh game of the Stanley Cup Finals, you know what the shift times were? Almost identical. And that is bad coaching. Because yes, Connor McDavid is the best player in the universe, unquestionable. Leon Draisaitl, a top 5, top 10 for sure player in the universe, unquestioned. But you know what, Chris? Even with a timeout, 2.5 minutes, you're not even getting 50% of their superpowers. And the difference between the Golden Knights is they can run 2 or 3 lines out in the last 2 minutes if they're chasing a goal. And Edmonton is like a bodybuilder who doesn't work on his legs. They're completely top heavy. Yeah, they had nothing, right? They had very few high danger chances in the last 2 minutes and 44 seconds with the empty net. And that's a difference in coaching. That's where Bruce Cassidy excels. And more than that, that's the difference between Kelly McCrimmon and Ken Holland and whoever replaced Ken Holland as the GM. Edmonton, I'm sorry.
This guy from Stan Bowman.
Oh, yeah, Stan. Folks, Edmonton was the early preseason favorite to win the Stanley Cup. Edmonton is not winning fuck all. You heard it here. That's the prognostication. They have terrible goaltending. The goal that Stuart Skinner let in last night to Ivan Barbashev was an accident. Even according to Barbashev, I was trying to pass the puck. Right? The difference in these teams is enormous. And depth and goaltending is the reason that the Golden Knights continually beat the Edmonton Oilers, and I anticipate will continue to do so as well. I just thought that was kind of a staggering stat because obviously we don't see that when we're watching the game live, but I watched the end of the game on the replay. I taped it on ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
3 minutes. Normal NHL shift times are about 40 seconds. A minute and you're kind of pushing it.
Well, what's interesting about that is there was a timeout for cleaning the ice.
Yep.
And then there was a timeout taken by Chris Knobloch. So while you got about 3 minutes of those guys, it wasn't like 3 straight minutes. There were some stoppages that gave them a little bit of a break and rest. But you know I find it interesting that Edmonton, their kryptonite seems to be the Golden Knights. And I still believe, and we will never know the answer to this, Eddie, but if the Golden Knights hadn't fucked up down the stretch last year and they played the Edmonton Oilers in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, they would have knocked the Edmonton Oilers out of the playoffs. Unfortunately for them, they screwed around. They got the Dallas Stars, who were I thought a superior team to nearly everybody. They just were out of gas when they advanced after playing the Golden Knights. And so I think that's not an excuse. I think that the 2 series they played previous to getting to Edmonton just took so much out of them that they really had nothing left after game 2. But I tend to agree with you. I don't think the Edmonton Oilers are going to win the Stanley Cup. I don't like their goaltending. I mean, Skinner.
I don't like them to win the Western Conference.
No, I don't think so either, because I think there's too many teams that are deeper And I'm not going to say more fundamentally sound.
Yes,
but,
you are, because it's true.
Well, what I was going to say is teams that have the structure to beat them and teams that play within their structure and understand how to play within their structure. Look, the LA Kings, they fuck them. Edmonton will blow through them again like a hot knife through butter. But it's when you get into the meat of it, the Colorado Avalanche, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Dallas Stars, maybe, Minnesota,
right now the Minnesota
maybe
Wild.
Yeah, so it's one of those situations where I don't believe in them. I thought last year was a fluke. And I mean, look, I get they have the best player in the world. But right now, Jack Eichel's better than Connor McDavid. And I don't roll your eyes.
Wait,
because
okay, you finish your point, and then I'm going to bring up the Jack Eichel thing that probably eluded you last.
No, it did not elude me
because I'm going there next because. Go ahead. Yes, right. I'll agree with you. At this point in time, Jack Eichel is a more complete 200-foot player.
Well, I think he's having a better season than Connor.
Significantly.
And that's my point. Look, if I'm starting a franchise from scratch, I want Connor McDavid. Don't get this twisted. But
I'm not happy if my second pick is Jack Eichel.
No, I wouldn't complain.
I wouldn't be unhappy at all.
I might take Nathan McKinnon, but Jack Eichel's in the discussion. The point is, I think today in the 2024-25 season, Jack Eichel's better right now. He's having a better season. And
flip the script for a second. How good a season do you think Jack Eichel is having if he plays on Edmonton?
I think he's having a phenomenal season as well.
Monstrous. Same output.
But I don't think he's having as good of a season if he's playing in Edmonton as he's having here.
Oh, because that's easy.
Because
the difference in the team.
Well, it's not just the difference in the team; it's a difference in coaching.
Yeah, everything.
And I think it's a difference in the organization. And look, that's not to say that Stan Bowman's not a good general manager. I won't get into the away from the ice stuff.
Nah.
But it's the Golden Knights have a better system in place than the Edmonton Oilers, which is why the Golden Knights have a Stanley Cup. The Edmonton Oilers haven't won one since Mark Messier was on the team. So I'm not making some kind of ridiculous claim that I would build my franchise around Jack Eichel over Connor McDavid. No, that's not it. My claim is today, right now, Jack Eichel is having a better season than Connor McDavid, and I think he would be better. Now, how good would Connor McDavid be if he played for the Vegas Golden Knights?
Stratospheric.
With a deeper team, a better defensive team, a team with better goalies, and a team with better coaching. He would probably be approaching 150 points easily.
But he'd have to play defense.
Well, I think we saw a little bit of that last night.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the transition to the ass-puckering moment of last night's game. Happened with about a minute to go. The Golden Knights cleared the defensive zone. Pass goes up the middle to Jack Eichel. He's at the blue line, looking at the proverbial yawning cage to go up 2-0. And listen, Jack, we love you. We slurp on you almost every single episode. But man, oh man, Shevitz. I don't know if you thought it when it happened, but when McDavid came back and stole the puck from Eichel and went the other way, I was like, holy fuck, they're about to score and Edmonton's going to win this game in overtime. And I would never ask Jack Eichel that question, but I sure would like to know the answer to what the hell he was thinking. Why didn't he just pump that biscuit in the basket, make it 2-0, and send us all downstairs to postgame a minute early? I don't know if you're superstitious like that or you believe in those sort of hockey karma god things. But when he didn't close the game out with a minute to go, I just had a terribly, terribly bad sinking feeling.
Yeah, I did too. I thought that would be a mistake, and Edmonton would find a way to equalize and maybe even win the game in overtime. Because look, I mean, the guys that they could throw out there in overtime are definitely guys that I think any team in the world would love to have on their overtime. Look, Bouchard, Draisaitl, and McDavid. That's one hell of a threesome right there. But fortunately, Golden Knights, they found the way. They found the energy deep down to make the necessary plays and keep the puck out of the net. There's something in that 6-on-5, and I don't think the fans pay attention to it as much as maybe you and I do, right? Because they're focused on putting the puck in the empty net, and I think you and I are more focused on like execution. Watch Braden McNabb and William Karlsson when they are out there for the 6-on-5. Their first thought is not to put the puck in the empty net. Their first thought is to make the responsible play, to make the play to maybe set up someone else to put the puck in the empty net. And there was a moment last night, right before the horn went off for the end of the game. Braden McNabb made this play behind the net where it was a simple play, right? That's what we hear all the time. Don't overcomplicate things. Just keep it simple. And it was such a simple play, but he put his body in between the Oiler and the puck. Then rather than make a risky pass, he makes the safe, boring, responsible pass around the boards, up the ice towards the blue line for the Golden Knights to get the puck out of the zone and basically force Edmonton with like 20 seconds left to maybe have one final push. It's boring. It's not the most exciting, interesting thing, but I'm telling you, when you watch Braden McNabb play on the penalty kill, when you watch him play on the 6-on-5, it's the little things that he does. He's such a high IQ player. He doesn't ever take a risk. He just does the right thing all the time. It's why he's one of my favorite players. And, you know, it's one of those things where you're not going to ask him about that in a post-game interview, but you just watch it. And as a fan of the game, you're just satisfied. You're like, you know, this guy just gets it. He understands. And William Karlsson's the same way. He doesn't ever get risky. He just does the right thing. And that's why this team is so good, because they have those two guys stand out, but they have so many players. Like I know he's not someone who's lit up the stat sheet, but Cole Schwindt to me has been one of those guys where you look at that move and the comparison in my mind is Ben Hutton. A lot younger than Ben Hutton, but a guy who was basically not going to be in the league. And Kelly McCrimmon saw something in Cole Schwindt. He was a high pick. He's just a responsible, smart player. He doesn't take risks. He just does the responsible thing. It seems like all the time. And there's moments where he's out on the ice with superstar players, and you're like, you know what? This guy belongs in the NHL. He's a bottom six guy. He's probably going to forever be a third or fourth line center. But Eddie,
you never know. I mean, look at Howdy.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that makes this team so good. They always seem to be able to find guys that other teams don't want, and they're able to turn them into good NHL hockey players. And it doesn't matter if it's Gerard Gallant with a guy like Ryan Carpenter, or if it's Pete DeBoer with a guy like
Daddy.
Or Michael Amadio. They just seem to always be able to find that player who no one else thinks is going to be a good player, and they're relegated to the AHL, or in the case of Ben Hutton, to his couch. This is why this team is so successful. Yes, they have superstar players. They have great players, Ivan Barbashev, Alex Pietrangelo. But when they made the move for Adin Hill, I don't think anyone looked at that move and said, that's the Stanley Cup winning move. No, but they did. And that's why they won a Stanley Cup, because they know what they're doing, and they know it better than anyone else in the league. And listen, when those two guys are gone, George and Kelly, franchise is going to look completely different. But I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. I think Bill Foley trusts them. Well, he clearly trusts them.
Yes.
But they are just so dialed in. And it amazes me how every time these guys seem to find a player like that, it works out for them. And Cole Schwindt, he's another guy. So far, 23, 24 games in, Cole Schwindt has proven that he's an everyday NHL player. And I think when Mark Stone comes back, I think he's not coming out of the lineup. I don't know how you take him out.
I don't think you can. I think he and God, I hate the fact I forgot his name. Who's the kid they just sent down to Henderson?
Cal Burke.
Yeah,
he was good.
Listen,
he was good.
I think Cal Burke showed, and yes, it was a limited cup of coffee. I think that he was noticeable, incredibly noticeable. Hustled his ass off.
I don't know. He almost had another.
I don't know anything about the kid. I don't know if he was a scorer in junior. I don't know anything, but I know what my eyes tell me. He was noticeable on the ice, and in a very short cup of coffee, I think that he earned Bruce's trust, and I think that bodes well for the future. When guys like that can come up, and apparently he's had a decent amount of seasoning in the AHL.
Yeah, he played a lot in the AHL. Yeah,
he came up and he fit seamlessly on an all-star laden NHL team. I was really impressed. I was disappointed that they sent him back. I agree with you 100%. Cole Schwindt has earned the right to stay in the lineup when Mark Stone comes back, and that's a difficult decision. I don't know that they can make Alexander Holtz the 13th forward and send him up to Popcorn Row with us. But if you look at the sum of the play and what they bring to the team, not over the last couple of games, but the course of the time in their lineup, Cole Schwindt brings more to the lineup in his capacity and what he's asked to do by Bruce Cassidy than what we're getting from Alexander Holtz. And frankly, I don't think it's close.
No, I think Holtz will be the odd man out. I think it's just a numbers game. You're not going to take Kolasar out.
No. It's Holtz or nobody.
Yeah, and I mean certainly it's not going to be Holtz over Stone. So
no,
I think Holtz is a guy who I think he's still learning the system. He's still relatively young. I don't want to say he hasn't lived up to the expectations, but the reality is
why wouldn't you say that? It's the absolute truth.
Yeah, I was going to say the reality is I don't think he has. This was a guy who was a high first round pick, and he has a second opportunity with the Golden Knights with a great coach, with a team that has tremendous leadership, and
nothing. A 5-game point streak and nothing.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, you thought just when you thought it was clicking with him, it went away, and he hasn't been able to find it. And I think like I said, I don't really think there's much debate about it. I think he's the guy who comes out, and if this team stays healthy, he may not get back in the lineup for a long time. But I agree with you on Cal Burke. By the way, another Boston kid, played 4 years at Notre Dame, and I think he was in the Avalanche system for a few years prior to coming to Vegas. But he's a guy who I thought played tremendously for them, and young kid, a guy who's just learning the league, but he seemed to fit, and he seemed to understand what his responsibilities were, and it seemed like he really understood the game. The speed was not too much for him.
No,
and so I think when the weird thing is, and I didn't really plan on going down the rabbit hole here, but I think he's probably your first call up again. When Mason Morelli, like the shitty thing is Brendan Brisson has kind of been buried, because I think it's probably Cal Burke, Mason Morelli, maybe Jonas Rondbjerg.
Why is it shitty? Brendan Brisson,
shitty for him.
Yes, but honestly, and it's hard to say stuff like this. Brendan Brisson is not a regular everyday NHL player.
Well, he hasn't proven it.
and I don't think he's ever going to be, and he's certainly not going to get the chance here. And
he's a nice kid, and
he's a nice kid. He comes from a great hockey lineage. His father is a world famous agent. He grew up having Sidney Crosby as his babysitter. All those stories are wonderful, but none of them put a point on the board. And the truth of the matter is he's had a number of bites at the apple, and there has been no sign whatsoever that he has a chance to stick with the big club.
Right.
If he's going to get a legitimate shot in the NHL, it's going to have to be in another sweater.
Right.
So we have one more topic to talk about, but we need a word from Marathon Law Group, the man who keeps Chapman available to me every week for podcast episodes while he's out doing what?
Where I'm at right now.
That's it. He's at the office right now because he probably has a consultation for some sort of. So Joe will be done in a couple of minutes. Joe at Marathon Law Group, everybody. But we'll be done so Chapman can discuss his legal future. So we'll be right back with a word from Marathon Law Group in just a moment.
I'm here with Joe Riccio from Marathon Law Group. And Joe, one of the things I hear all the time when people are in accidents is they don't want to go after the other driver because they feel bad about going after the sweet old lady who may have hit them or the young kid who just got his driver's license. They don't want it to go on his record or whatever. So why is that a mistake?
Well, I'll tell you, Chris, it's actually a common event. We get people that will come in here and say, well, I feel bad. The person was so nice after the accident. They came over to me and they asked if I was okay. And meanwhile, that is, the humanity side of it. The other side of it, though, is that person's not going to be paying for your lost wages at work. They're not going to be paying for the damages to your vehicle. They're not going to be paying for your medical damages. And so what I often tell people in those situations, Chris, is that you're not going after the little old lady or the person who hit you. You're actually filing a claim against the insurance company that is associated with the person that hit you, and they are the ones that will be bearing and fighting the claim, not that person.
So just for clarification, if I'm in an accident and the person who hits me is sweet and nice and I feel bad about it, if I sue them, it's not coming out of their pocket in most cases.
That is correct. You're not taking their house, you're not taking their car. They have an insurance policy for a reason, and that would be what you would be dealing with is the policy and the insurance company.
Okay, we're back. Last segment. Today's a big day in the hockey world. The Four Nations tournament. Rosters will be announced. Sweden and Finland have announced their lineups. William Karlsson will be representing the three crowns of Sweden. The USA and Canada's lineup will be released a little bit later this afternoon. I think it's a wonderful idea in concept. The All-Star game is a dog rocket, getting back to today's episode name. It's a giant fucking waste of 3 days. This is four countries, the United States, Canada, Finland, and Sweden, playing in a round-robin tournament in February. It's sort of a prelude to the All-Star. Not to the All-Star.
Olympics.
Fucking idiot. Yes, it's a prelude to the Olympics. But I'm concerned. And I'm not going to lie, I'm concerned. What, God forbid, what happens if there's an injury? I mean, this tournament to me can be two things. It can be a series of exhibition games, or it can be the fiercest competition like the World Juniors is. World Juniors are. I don't like this as a mid-season tournament because, and I'm not just talking about the Golden Knights. There's going to be, 6, maybe 7? Karlsson, Hill, Pietrangelo, Theodore, Eichel. Who are we missing? Stone, maybe. Can you imagine? Look at Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard. If one of these players who these teams are paying tens of millions of dollars gets hurt, listen, if they lose McDavid, we already know they're not going to win the cup, but you can bet on them not making the playoffs. Period. End of statement. So while I love the concept of it, I am not a huge supporter. I know the players love it. I know they've been begging for a best on best since, forever, and when they weren't allowed to go to the Olympics. And I understand playing for country, and I support it. But if you're a fan of your NHL team, if you're Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee, how happy are you that 6 or 7 of your best players are going to play, in essence, a 3 or a 4 game exhibition tournament?
Well, especially when you look at the Mark Stone injury, because it doesn't appear that it was a contact injury.
Right.
So, that's one of those moments where you're just like, fuck. If one of these guys gets hurt, first of all, I can speak from experience because I am a New York Mets fan. And 2 years ago in the World Baseball Classic, their star ace closer, Edwin Diaz, he busted up his knee celebrating a win. He was done for the year celebrating a win. So I don't know full disclosure, I love it. I love the tournament. I love the best on best. I want to see this as a fan. But if I'm an executive, obviously I don't want this, because the last thing I want is one of my good players going to play in this thing, getting injured, missing 4 or 5 weeks after the All-Star break because maybe they block a shot and they break their wrist, or they can't hold the puck or the stick or whatever it is. But as a fan, I want more teams, because I'm pretty pissed off that Czechia is not in this. And I'd love to see a rest of the world team with some of the Swiss players, and obviously Draisaitl. And you've got who's the Nikolai Ehlers is from Denmark, and Matt Zuccarello, by the way, talk about a nasty fucking injury.
Oh, we're not going there. We are not. Stop it.
He's a Norwegian guy. So there's enough talent from other places in the world to have a best of the world team or rest of the world team. So as a fan, I want more.
Yes,
if I'm an executive, I want nothing else to do with it.
I'm going to watch it. Right?
Of course, yeah, we're going to watch it.
We're going to watch it, and we're probably going to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, if you're Kelly and George and Bill Foley, your ass might be puckered tight enough that it can whistle, because that's 4 games, and especially if it turns into hyper competitive,
right?
Right,
as it very well could.
As you would almost guarantee that it would, because
U.S. and Canada, and then Sweden and Finland, those could be absolute slobber knockers, to quote the great Jim Ross. Yeah,
and so as a Golden Knights fan, and I am, but I can be fair about my fandom. I'm worried, and I'm worried for the NHL, because the brand of the NHL will take a hit if some of their superstars get hurt in an exhibition in the midseason.
Yeah,
it's going to be wildly unpopular. Write "fuck you" in the comments if that's what you think. I totally get it. It's my fucking podcast. I can share my opinion. Chapman gets to share his opinion. I just hope that everybody comes through this thing healthy, and the rest of the people who didn't qualify for the teams get a nice tan in Cabo, and they get to heal up their bumps and bruises that they've got through the first 40, 45, 50 games of the year. But I don't know. I don't like it. And that's going to be the last word for Skyrockets and Dog Rockets. Episode 90 is in the book. We want to thank our sponsors, as we always do. The Las Vegas Advisor at lasvegasadvisor.com. My good friend, Dr. John Pierce, and the Marathon Law Group, the man who keep Joe, our guy Joe. Not only does Joe keep Chapman available for the podcast, he puts up tickets. Those free tickets, yes, we're giving away more free tickets. We'll have an announcement on the next game and what you have to do to enter the drawing to win lower bowl tickets. We're going to try and get a weekend game so I can drag Chapman's ass to dinner with the winner and then stick him with the bill, because that's just the kind of guy that I am. But yeah, thanks to Joe.
We're doing Burger King if that's the case.
What?
We're doing Burger King if that's the case.
marathonlawgroup.com. Anything you need, divorce, child custody, domestics, personal injury, they've covered it all. Marathonlawgroup.com. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this bad boy. We're on Instagram. HockeyNightsVegas.com is where you go to find all the places you can find the podcast. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. We're goddamn everywhere. That's where we are. 10 more episodes to go to the big 100th episode. And man, oh man, are we going to have a special guest for you. I can't tell you anything more about it, but if we make it to 100, both of us, alive and kicking, episode 100 is going to be epic. Thank you all for viewing and listening and supporting and liking and commenting. For Chris Chapman, my name is Eddie Rivkin. Episode 90, Skyrockets and Dog Rockets is in the book. We'll be back next week. Have a good day, everybody.